Welcome to the Real Estate Pros Show, where we interview real estate investing professionals from coast to coast, as well as the service providers that serve the real estate investing industry. Our goal is simple: share what's working now to help you improve and scale your business to the next level and meet the pros that can help you get there. Real Estate Pros is powered by Investor Fuel, America's leader in helping real estate investors and professionals build the business you need to live the life you've always dreamed of. Let's start today's show. Property insurance for real estate investors doesn't have to be difficult, but it does need to be there to protect you when you need it. MyInvestorInsurance.com not only provides insurance at 15 to 30% cheaper than traditional agencies, it's built specifically for real estate investors like you. You can set up an account in about 2 minutes, get quotes on properties, turn on and turn off insurance for your fix and flip or rental properties in around 2 minutes without having to talk to anyone directly, all through our portal. There's no better way or faster way to make sure you've got the coverage you need to protect you, and no more lengthy policies either. Once you're set up, you're billed monthly and prorated by the day for however long your policy is active. It's powered by MSI, the third largest independent MGA, with 1.5 million customers and more than $1 billion in cumulative premiums written. Get set up today in about 2 minutes at myinvestorinsurance.com/fuel.
All right, guys, welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Brett McCollum, and I'm here today with Bonnie Lowe. And today we're going to be talking about midterm rentals. Before we do, guys, at Investor Fuel, we help real estate investors, service providers, and real estate entrepreneurs to 2 to 5x their businesses, allow them to build the businesses they've always wanted, and live the lives they've always dreamed of. Without further ado, Bonnie, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing good. Thanks for being here with me. It was really good pre-show, getting to know you a little bit, catching up. I'm excited for the show. But before we get into everything, and I know we're going to talk about a lot, before we do, can you do me a favor? Let's back up as far as you want. Give me some context. Who is Bonnie Lowe?
Yeah, so I'm a mom and a grandma, boy mom, 3 boys and 3 grandsons. So we're all boys all the time around here. Started investing in 2016 with my husband at the time, and built a what I like to think of as a small but mighty real estate portfolio. I really subscribe to that philosophy, small but mighty. I wanted it to be something that was manageable, sustainable, would help us build legacy wealth for our family, and that's what we set out to do. So, been doing it since 2016. Been involved in a lot of real estate transactions during that time. We started off flipping like a lot of people do. This was the era of HGTV shows where everybody was watching. It was pre-Chip and Joanna Gaines, but everybody was learning about how to flip properties. And in fact, the book that kind of changed my mindset about it, because I really didn't, I thought it was for people who were very experienced, for wealthy people, that type of thing, celebrities. But the book that kind of made it more relatable for me is one that I never, ever hear anybody mention, and it was called Find It, Fix It, Flip It. And I believe it was by Michael Corbett, who was the host of an HGTV type show at the time on flipping properties, but he just laid it out in a format that the numbers made sense to me, and I could visualize how we could do that as just, normal people getting into the business. So we started out flipping some homes in our hometown area of far northern California. And then we quickly realized that, excuse me, flipping homes was great and all, but then we didn't have an asset when we were done. Really what we ended up with was a tax liability in terms of, increased taxable income. And so about that time, we were learning about the BRRRR method on bigger pockets. And so we shifted to doing some BRRRRs. And, post 2008 housing crisis, you were able to pick up properties that were that allowed you to do what is called, the perfect BRRRR, or to receive infinite returns on those properties. And so basically, we bought extremely distressed real estate, like red tagged properties. And because my husband had a sort of a construction background and was very hands on, we took those properties down to the studs. I mean, in some cases, down to just 3 remaining walls, and then rebuilt them. They became, the quintessential nicest home on the block. We took them from an eyesore, a blight on the community, to make them a beautiful property. And
Stop living on an island and join the #1 mastermind in America for professional real estate investors. Investor Fuel is a community of hundreds of the nation's top investors working together to build stronger businesses and better lives. In addition to the amazing community of real estate investors acting as a board of advisors for one another, Investor Fuel members have access to 100% funding on purchase and repairs for our members only, a health insurance program, and benefits and discounts that more than pays for the membership of most of our members, meaning it's actually costing you money to not be a member of Investor Fuel. If you're looking to scale your business and build a business that allows you to live the life of your dreams, please visit investorfuel.com today and book a call with our team.
then we're able to keep those as long-term rentals. And so that's kind of how we built our portfolio. We did some bare land acquisition transactions, but we really liked owning the property at the end of the day. And we've done that. We've got a small portfolio with long-term rentals, midterm rentals, which is what we're going to talk about later today. And then we've got one short-term rental, which is a story in and of itself if you want to, go there in all of this. But generally speaking, I really like owning that tangible asset, and in fact have shifted my focus primarily to the midterm rental space. And also, I am now a lender, and I'm using my 401k, which has been rolled over into a self-directed IRA, so that I can be a private money lender as well. And so I'm working both sides of the transactions, both as an investor and as a lender. And that helps me take the lessons that I've learned and apply them to other folks that I'd like to help out in this realm, both in terms of like mentorship and being able to bring some funding to support their deals as well. So that's kind of where I'm at today in a nutshell.
Very cool. Yeah, man, there's a lot to unpack there. Let me do this. Let's go back a little bit here. So pre-2016, what was work life like? What were you doing before real estate?
Yeah, so I worked in local government for a long time. Can't say I loved it. Then I went into, I did some consulting, I did a lot of grant writing, worked for a nonprofit for over a decade, a great company. I liked the people, I loved the company, I loved the mission, but it was never anything that I was passionate about. I've always been passionate about real estate. You talk about going way back. When my husband and I were just dating, this is back in the 90s, we would drive around and look at property when we were dating. That was our idea of fun. And so it was something that was always really important to both of us and something that we wanted to get into. But when we started out, we were like a lot of young couples. I worked for county government, didn't make a whole lot of money. He owned a feed and farm supply store. We were always big in agriculture, and that didn't make any money, believe me. So there was nothing left over for us to think about investing with. And so our focus was really just on getting our own, primary home for a long time. But we never lost that interest, that passion, that drive for real estate. And we just kept educating ourselves until we got to the point where, our personal and financial circumstances were a little more stable. We were a little bit older. We had some money to work with. And then this is a story that I don't often tell, but because we had been in agriculture for so long and we raised livestock, we actually sold a bunch of cattle and horses to buy our first property. We owned 8 brood mares at the time, and we sold them all except for one to come up with a down payment on the first property that we ever bought. So that was kind of a fun story. Yeah.
That's really cool. All right, I have to ask the question then. How long did you have the cattle that you sold?
Oh, it's something we've done our whole lives. Yeah, my husband and I were both in agriculture. I was in 4-H as a 9-year-old, he was as well. His story was he started off selling pet rocks in the 1980s. You're probably too young to remember this, but that was a thing that like people bought pet rocks. And so he stood on the corner and he sold pet rocks for like $0.25 a piece.
If you're looking for consistent, high-quality leads, look no further than Investor Machine. Investor Machine isn't just another agency, it's the most sophisticated, data-driven lead generation company on the planet for real estate investors, and serves the role of being not just a lead generator for your business, but a marketing partner that is helping you achieve your goals along the way. Go to investormachine.com to learn more and schedule a call with our team today.
Made enough money doing that to buy a bunch of rabbits. Then he sold the rabbits and bought goats, and then he sold the goats and he bought pigs, and then he sold the pigs and he bought cattle. And so that
Then you
was
sold the
how,
cattle and bought houses. Look at this.
and then we sold cattle and horses to buy houses. So yeah, you could say that our investing journey began with a box of rocks,
You
literally.
guys are the farmer version of Monopoly,
Pretty
right?
much.
That's
Always trading up, yeah, for sure.
yeah, that's incredible. That's really cool. That's really cool. All right, so it's 2016. You buy your first property. The first one, was it a flip? Was it a rental? What was the first property?
Yeah, it was a flip. It was property that had some flood damage, and so it wasn't a full gut, but it was pretty extensive. And we flipped it and staged it. We followed the flipping playbook, so to speak.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you is how, so on your first flip, how did you know what to do and how to do it?
Yeah. Well, again, my husband has always been involved in construction in one way or another. He worked for an industrial construction company, had done a ton of remodeling just in our own homes. And so it was pretty easy for us to look at it and assess it and have a firm background of what to expect. And it wasn't a lot of people struggle with how to price things, but
Yeah.
again, because we were so used to dealing with materials, we didn't have a lot of difficulty pricing it. He was very hands-on. He did a lot of the work himself. There were things that we subbed out, like he would not touch electrical or plumbing, and so we subbed those things out. But, we always made it a family affair. At the time, my oldest son
Yeah.
was working for a concrete company. And so when we had to pour a back patio slab and some
Love that one.
sidewalk work, my son came and framed it
Called
and
them up.
poured it. And, my
Uh-huh.
other boys helped with it as well. We had the kids out there helping with landscaping. They were learning to put up drywall, helping us, remove the ancient linoleum from the floor that was glued down with the
I bet
strongest
that was their
glue
favorite
on
job,
earth.
right?
Yeah, it was a big job. It was a big job, but we always involved all of them. So that's really how we tackled it. It
Yeah.
wasn't scary. It wasn't daunting. Like it just felt like a home project that we would have done at our own home.
Yeah,
It really wasn't. A lot of people get really kind of freaked out about that first flip because you're not really sure what you're doing. But I think it
sure.
was an area we were both really comfortable in.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, and I love the stories where it's the whole family's involved. So my kids are still young. My oldest is 11. Okay, right. And but since they were, little, as long as they can sit upright, you know what I mean? Like they're driving at a minimum, they're driving around looking at property with me, and
My
now, now
my
I've chosen
oldest
a few
son
houses.
My oldest son used to complain because whenever we'd go somewhere, we'd be listening to real estate podcasts in the car, and he'd be like, "Mom, no, please, can we listen to something else?"
Not another one. Yeah.
No, no, no. But you know what? He's an investor today, so you're welcome, Tyler.
You're welcome. Yeah, if
Yeah.
you're listening to this, Tyler, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna make it, Tyler, at the 11 minute and 13-second mark. Let's rewind it, and hopefully you listen to that again. Anyway, that's funny. So yeah, I love that. So all right, it's 2016. You're starting to flip houses. What did you guys start just doing the one house? Did you take down a bunch of like? What was the process like back then?
Yeah, so we went from that first flip into a second flip, and then that was right when the market was changing, right? So when we started, there was still a lot of foreclosures and short sales and REO, real estate owned properties, on the books, and so you could pick them up, um, fairly easily, and the numbers worked. And then interest rates started dropping really precipitously, and we got into those, amazing interest rates that we all enjoyed for some time.
If you're a new or newer real estate investor looking to launch or grow your real estate investing business, please check out Investor Fuel Club. It's a coaching community, but unlike anything you've ever seen before. And you can actually partner with members of our mastermind from coast to coast on deals right in your market. There's no better opportunity to build a consistent business than to literally partner with pros to help you avoid costly mistakes, avoid the need for capital to do deals, and help you eliminate your fears as you're starting your business. Learn more about Investor Fuel Club at investorfuel.com/club.
But what that did was, everybody jumped into the game, the properties started to evaporate, or the asking price really escalated because suddenly, so many people were buying properties, even investment properties at those low interest rates. And so we thought, we need to shift our model a little bit. That's when we picked up some bare land. We wanted to do some development on the bare land. We ended up not doing the development on the bare land. Basically, we were in a community that has an HOA. They had really strict CCNRs for your development and for your actual construction type, and it just made the numbers not pencil for an investment property. So we sold off the bare land. And then that's when we started doing the BRRRR method. So the buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat that Brandon Turner and the Bigger Pockets folks talk about. And that's really what we stuck with. And we've done that ever since. So we acquired a few properties that way. We actually really like the ADU model, which, accessory dwelling unit model, and that's something that we have looked for and targeted in our business when we were building our portfolio. ADUs are really common on the West Coast, not so much the rest of the country, I have found. But basically, we would look for a property that had a main home and then had a secondary uh, area that could be converted to additional living space. And so in most cases, it would be like a detached garage or a studio or a shop, or something like that that could be converted into a secondary living space. We did that initially just thinking like we're going to rehab both of these things and we're going to get, two rental units out of one acquisition, right? Out of one property. That was originally our thought. But somewhere during this time, short-term rentals became the shiny object, and everybody was talking about how you could really accelerate your, your net worth growth with short-term rentals, and you could juice your cash flow with short-term rentals. And then if you were high W-2 earners, which we were at the time, you could offset a lot of your income with the tax advantages of short-term rentals. And so we're like, well, maybe we should add one of those to our portfolio. So we started looking for short-term rentals, but it did feel like a big pivot from what we were used to, being landlord with long-term rentals and focusing on the, rehab portion of the projects. And so we decided, and it was just like, serendipity, I guess. We decided to take one of our properties with an ADU that we were in the middle of rehabbing. And I said, what if we just dabbled in this midterm rental space? I mean, it's a furnished rental, right? It's a lot like a short-term rental. You have to deal with guests. You have more frequent turnover. Before we drop a bunch of money into a luxury short-term rental halfway across the country or all the way across the country, let's dabble in the midterm space in our own backyard. And let's convert one of our ADU units to a midterm, and that's what we did, and that's what got us started in midterms. I figured, like, worst case scenario, it doesn't work out, and we sell all of the furniture and furnishings that we bought on Facebook Marketplace. That was really our plan. But it worked out phenomenally, and we just love the midterm rental model, and so we've done, continued to do more of that, and then just really in the process of trying to really learn at the time what midterms were about, there was not a lot of information out there. Like nobody was talking about midterms. And even today, a lot of people are not talking about midterms. Um, but I started to do a bunch of research and try to figure out, like, how would we do this? How do we set it up? How do we anticipate what the revenue is going to be? How do we do our underwriting? What kind of tools and systems do I need to manage guests? And, just all of those things. A lot of that is very similar to what you would do for a short-term rental, but of course, we hadn't done a short-term rental
Right.
yet. So it just felt less risky to experiment with a small one-bedroom, one-bath unit in our hometown and put it out there as a midterm rental than to go all in on a short-term rental
That's
acquisition.
right.
But in the process of researching, like, how does this midterm rental thing work? I'd kind of heard about it almost like a buzzword. I couldn't find much information. I mean, I searched YouTube, the internet, podcasts, and I remember there was this one podcast I had listened to with this gal from Atlanta, Georgia, who was doing midterm rentals, and she was really targeting the movie industry.
Okay.
And I was like, this makes a ton of sense. And that was the most information I was able to gather at the time on midterm
Yeah.
rentals. And I was
And
like,
this is when.
this was like, this would have been like 2019, I think.
Okay.
So, not that long ago, really. And my husband at one point said to me, he goes, you're doing all of this research on midterm rentals and you're a writer. I think I mentioned, I'd been a grant writer. Um, he's like, why don't you write a book on this topic? Why don't you write a book on midterm rentals? And I was like, I maybe I'll do that. And so I started writing it, developing my manuscript. And part of what I was doing was interviewing people who were starting to come on the scene in the midterm rental space.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, the first person that I reached out to interview was Sarah D. Weaver. And you might know her because she is very famous in the midterm rental space. And she, along with Ziana McIntyre, wrote the book 30 Day Stay, which is published by Bigger Pockets, but they hadn't written the book at the time, or they hadn't published it
Wow.
at the time. So I said, Sarah, thank you for meeting with me and allowing me to interview you for this book that I'm writing on midterm rentals. And she says, oh, I'm more than happy to be interviewed for your book. I really appreciate it. She said, but full disclosure, I have to tell you, I just wrote a book on midterm rentals and it's going to be published next month by Bigger.
No way.
Yeah, so I was just like instantly deflated. And I thought, oh, shoot, well, somebody has already beat me to the punch. And in true Sarah fashion, she said, you know what? You should write your book anyway,
Yeah.
because hearing what you're going to write about and the way you plan to build this book, it's very different than what we wrote. And I believe that the universe wants abundance. And there is room for more information for people in this space, and you should do it.
I love it.
I loved it too, and I just thought, oh my gosh, how incredibly gracious of her. First, to be totally transparent about it, and then to be so open and encouraging. And I'll never forget that. It was the sweetest thing, and it meant so much to me at the time. And so I went ahead and, continued working on the book, and I'm trying to put the finishing touches on it today because there still is not a lot available
Right.
information about the midterm rental space. So yeah, that's kind of how we transitioned from focus on being long-term rental landlords, which we still have in our portfolio, to kind of shifting our focus more to midterm rentals.
Yeah. All right. I want to back up a smidge here. Still in the midterm rental space, okay? For the audience, because it is not something we hear a lot about every day. We've all heard of it at this point, but maybe not some of the finer details. Could you maybe high level it for me? Let's start off from let's do a format of like what it is,
Yeah.
that 30-day stay, to however long, like what do you qualify as a midterm rental? Maybe and then maybe two or three, touch points as far as like benefits.
Yeah.
And then it would be wise of us to talk about some pitfalls to avoid too.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, just real simply, a midterm rental is a furnished rental that is a 30+ day stay. It operates like a hybrid between a long-term and a short-term. When we think of short-term rentals, we think of, a hospitality type situation. People are going on vacation, you're providing a hospitality experience. With a long-term rental, they're not furnished and really nobody's concerned about the
Yeah.
hospitality aspect in the long-term rental world. But midterms sit right in between that. Your guests are booking for 30 plus days. They not only expect a beautiful, curated property, they are expecting that hospitality aspect to your service for
Mm,
them. And so that's what really makes midterm rentals unique. In terms of benefits, for a long-term rental property, like when we're doing our underwriting on a midterm rental to see if the numbers make sense, it's a rule of thumb, and I will just caveat that by saying the world of midterm rentals is extremely broad. You have everything from what most people think of a midterm rental of being like travel nurse housing.
yeah.
That became very popular during COVID. Um, it was all in the news. But that's just one niche within midterm rentals. You've got everything from, a small studio or one bedroom, one bath unit that are ideal for the single travel nurse or travel medical professionals, all the way up to luxury properties that are being booked for, um, corporate housing. They could be insurance placement properties, like if a family sustains some type of major damage at their property and their insurance will look for a place to put them in the meantime while their property is being, uh, you know, rehabbed, and everything in between. There are just so many uses for midterm rentals. So what
Right.
I would tell people is like when you're doing your underwriting, it's a good rule of thumb to use 1.5 to 2x long-term rents as your
Yeah.
projected income, depending on the type of property and your sort of your guest avatar, if you will, or the market niche that you are serving with your particular property. So you have the opportunity to take a property that would rent on average as a long term and kind of juice your returns for that. In return for the additional rents, there is the expectation that you furnish the property, and there is the expectation that you are managing turnovers, providing cleaning, paying for the utilities. Those types of things are usually included in most of your midterm rental um, properties, but you have the higher returns as well. People also really like it as an alternative to short-term rental for a couple of reasons. One is a lot less wear and tear and guest turnover. And if you've been a short-term rental host for a while, you could be pretty exhausted by both of those things. Midterm rental is a little more stable, fewer guests going in and out of your property, less wear and tear on your property and your furnishings. But the other reason people like it is you tend to get a very high quality of guest in your midterm rentals if you're doing proper, guest vetting. So there's some real advantages to it. And
I love
as
it.
much
Yeah.
as we talk about it like it's a new thing, if you think about like a boarding house, we all think
Yeah.
back to like the 1800s, right? And there was the boarding house that, people rented rooms by the room. That's kind of the origin of a midterm rental. It's just a more sophisticated model today than it was originally.
Yeah. Man, that's really cool. So you guys started doing these midterm rentals roughly, was it 2019 or was it
It was
a little
about
bit before?
2019, yeah.
Yeah. So um you guys had a sweet like run time frame, right? So you hit that low interest rate period where you're able to get in to do that. Um, how is the midterm rental market performing in today's market?
Yeah, so like I said, midterm rental space is super broad.
Yeah,
And so it's really market by market, right? It's hard to say overall how it's
sure.
performing, but what I will say is that it has changed. It has evolved so rapidly just in the few years that, we've been doing it. There, the places where you list your midterm rental property, you can look at them just like you can look at short-term rental listing sites, right? And even just a couple of years ago, most properties kind of looked like your grandma's extra bedroom.
Mm,
In terms of like the furnishings and the amenities, it was all like secondhand, and people were just renting out a room in their house, and it was essentially a midterm rental. That has completely changed, completely changed. It has evolved so rapidly and become much more professional, much more on par with the short-term rental space in terms of the furnishings and the amenities and the professional photography and the systems that people are using to manage their properties. So all of that has changed really dramatically in a short amount of time. And a lot of that is driven by the change in short-term rental regulations.
Yeah,
Most people are
for
familiar
sure.
with cities that are, banning or restricting short-term rentals. Well, a lot of those folks, they have a furnished property already. They have the systems in place to manage guest communications and turnovers and everything else. It's a very easy pivot to make with a short-term rental to move it to the midterm rental space. You need to understand leasing for your state. You need to understand how to vet and background check your guests, and you need to set up some type of a rent collection system, because those platforms do all of that for you, and that didn't exist in the midterm rental space until fairly recently. Um, so that's really what you have to do to be able to pivot. But those sort of professional operators in the short-term rental space have moved to midterm rentals, and they've really up leveled it in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
So the markets, because they're bringing so many different types of properties into the midterm space, um, I'm not seeing a lot of market saturation for midterm rentals if you have an excellent property, but we are seeing different markets known for different things. And so it's really important that you know the market that you're going into,
Right.
whether you're going to buy or you already have a property that you're trying to put into that market.
Good. That's good information there. Question. You've been running and doing this, all this. What's next for you guys? What are you looking forward to?
Yeah. So I mentioned to you earlier that, this has been a season of a lot of change for me. I talked a lot about my husband and investing with him, and we lost him last year. He had been uh, ill for about a year, and fortunately, because of the real estate portfolio that we had built together, I was able to leave my W-2 job to be his caregiver during that time. And I chose not to go back to the workforce, and instead, um, in many ways to honor him, but to honor myself as well, and be
Yeah.
able to do something that I feel really passionate about. I've shifted gears quite a bit and had to take stock of what I really love, what I want to do with the rest of my life, where I want to be. Um, so I moved from California, which is where we've lived all of our lives, to North Carolina. That happens to be where our short-term rental is, and that's uh, crazy timing. I moved here 2 weeks before Hurricane Helene hit this
Oh
area.
man.
So it's been kind of crazy, but restarting this journey without him, I really needed to focus on what I know, what I'm comfortable with, and what I love.
Yeah.
I'm still investing, and I feel like I have the skill set to continue flipping properties, to continue developing my midterm rental portfolio. I'm just focused on a different area now. I'm focused on the East Coast instead of on the West Coast. Still own all my properties on the West Coast. Um, I'd always wanted to be a lender. I find financing fascinating, and it's the grease that makes the gears turn in real
Yeah.
estate, right? And so it always felt like a very, like, kind of like a mysterious process. You give your lender every document that you possess, and you cross your fingers for 30 plus days and hope that you get to the closing table, and you don't really understand what's happening in the background.
Right. Right.
And I knew that if I could just sort of peek behind the curtain and be a part of it, I would understand financing better. I would be able to uh, use financing more creatively and more um, profitably, quite frankly, if I better understood the mechanisms. And so I partnered with a colleague of mine. We have a brokerage, and I'm focusing very much on two things right now. I'm focusing on my lending business, both hard money and private money. And I'm focused on continuing to educate and mentor people in the midterm rental space. So
Nice.
that's
Yeah.
really, I'll always pick up a deal if it's a good deal. I underwrite deals all the time
Yeah.
for myself. Like most of us, my phone scrolling is looking at realtor.com and Zillow listings. That's never going to change. But what I'm personally doing and what I feel like is right for this point in my life is focusing on these other strategies as
Sure.
well. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, this is a lot of information to unpack. So I encourage you guys to, if you're listening, go back, re-listen to, especially when you were talking on the high level about the midterm rental space. But I appreciate you sharing your insight and your knowledge on that. If people want to reach out to you, kind of connect and get to know you a little bit more, what's the best way for that to happen?
Yeah, so the best way is just email. It's my name, Bonnie, Bonnie, at findcapital.com, and that's FYND capital.com. If you're
Okay.
interested in midterm rentals and would like to be part of the MTR Connect, which is our midterm rental group, we have a Facebook page, but where people are most active is in the weekly meetings. We meet every
Yeah.
Friday, noon Eastern time, and reach out to me with an email and say, hey, I'd like to join your group, and I'll add you to our distribution. It's a great place to come when you need support, when
Yeah.
you need to troubleshoot your listing, when you're sourcing a resource, if you want to refer some of your guests because they're moving on to another area and you want to kind of hand them off to the next host. We do a lot of that inside our group. So it's a great space for people who are interested in midterm rentals, whether you're just getting started or you're a very experienced midterm rental host.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that guys, we'll put all that information, Bonnie. We'll put it in the show notes for everybody to connect with. And guys, I really strongly encourage you to connect there, and do that, especially if you're even remotely considering. Hopefully, I'm not stepping out of line, Bonnie, to say this. If you're remotely considering the MTR space, I think a place like that for you guys to connect both
Oh,
on the Facebook page and on those meetings would be a great place to sit in on and just see if this is something you should do. I fully support it. I think it's phenomenal what you've done. So, you guys make sure you can do that. But Bonnie, thanks again for being with me today and hanging out and get to know you a little bit. I appreciate your time.
yeah, I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey guys, again, thanks for hanging out with us, spending your time as well. And we will see each of you on the next episode. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us for today's Real Estate Pros Show. You can learn more about the amazing benefits of the Investor Fuel Mastermind community, including surrounding yourself with hundreds of other rock stars, 100% financing for your deals, and members-only discounts from vendors you're likely already using that, as a member of Investor Fuel, will save you more than the cost of your membership. Visit investorfuel.com to learn more. If you're interested in joining us as a guest of this show, please visit investorfuel.com/pros to apply. You can also check the show notes for access to free resources, how to get access to world-class lead generation, and much more. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next show.